Alright, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to more Witch on the Holy Night. We're going to be continuing right where we left off, not going into the archives this time. We're going to be going right to the next chapter. So, yeah, because I don't think I saw anything new in the archives, so I guess we're not going to be... I guess we'll only be going over that unless there is something new that pops up in there. So, that being said, let's get on with it. In short, this is what happened yesterday. I saw aliens, but nobody believes me. On moonless nights, you must never turn around. Was it a precept or an admonition? Long ago, when my current way of life was something I could never have imagined even in my wildest dreams. One night, without warning, I was suddenly filled with a dread so profound it made me want to cry, and ran to my grandfather in his workshop. Softly, he put his hand on my head. His gentle smile was totally unlike the grandfather I knew. For the Red Death is watching you from behind. Rather than comforting me, he left me with those hopeless words and sent me home. That night, I definitely saw a shadow lurking behind me, somebody watching me from far, far away. Little by little, year by year, the distance shortened. I wonder if Red Death he means Aoko Alsaki, because she is called Dirty Red. Or, well, okay, that was Toko. Well, either one, I suppose. Until finally, what had started as a tiny dot was so close I could feel it breathing down my neck. Of course, it was only a hallucination. Nobody was actually there. Nevertheless, the night it all started. What I felt at the time was without a doubt the indescribable dread of certain death. It's ominous. Hi diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. The cow jumped over the moon, the little dog laughed. How long ago was it? That hazy picture book-like recollection buried deep within my distant childhood memories. Even now, on dark nights, my grandfather's foreboding words lingered in my ears. No matter how loudly the wind roared, no matter how entrancingly the girl beside me sang, I could never drown them out. They've arrived. Beside me, Alice spoke. For some reason I thought this was, Sojiro giving, like, a monologue or something. It's kind of hard to imagine Sojiro doing something like that, considering he's not the brightest person. So, him, like, using all these words and sounding, like, kind of poetic just doesn't really fit his character. But I could be wrong, I don't know. We don't really know too much about him at the moment. Her inflectionless voice marked her as a bystander to the night's proceedings. Aside from us, the park was totally deserted. We had come here to celebrate the birth of the new me. Whatever that means. Though I had to say it wasn't the most inviting night for my big debut. Thick, heavy clouds blocked the stars like a black umbrella, carried along by a strong wind that tore the sky. The hands on the clock in the center of the park pointed straight up, as if reaching for the moon. Too bad for them, there was no moon to reach tonight. The ferocity of the winter air grew with each passing moment. Every breath I took made me feel like I was being frozen from the inside out. The chill sank into my bones, ran up my spine, and stabbed straight into my brain, so that my mind wouldn't be numbed, so that my fingers wouldn't turn to stone. I stoked a fire with my heartbeat and emotions. I'll transfer the tactile response over to you. How fortunate. In that position, the will-o-wisp will ignite. I answered Alice with a nod. Right then, just for a moment, I could see the ground. My legs were trembling weakly. It was probably just the cold, but I couldn't be sure. It could just as easily be fear. I sighed. If my emotions were working, that meant I was still human. I didn't have time to wallow in sentimentality, though before the sensations from the barrier began to flow into me from Alice. An invisible wall covering the entire park, an imperceptible carpet rooted deep underground. And Alice rhymes of Mother Goose ringing out through the night. My body became one with those feelings. My right arm broke out in goosebumps. Someone had invaded it. The prickling sensation crawled up my arm like ants, slowly but surely aiming at my heart. Squashing the urge to brush it away, I waited for a more decisive position, a more definitive opportunity. A moonless night. The dim streetlights in the park did little to pierce the darkness. The ants stopped their march, far, far away from my right arm, near the very center of my being. Even without using my eyes, I could see the invader lurking in the darkness. Roughly 30 paces behind me, to the right, the figure crawling through the bushes on all fours raised its right hand as if to beckon me, and There. I felt the enemy's movements almost as soon as they happened. That's kind of awkward every time it does that. My body spun around. What the fuck? An arm raced towards me like a spear. That's a long arm. It's Mr. Fantastic. And the high-speed lethal weapon fired at the back of my head sliced harmlessly through my hair. Thanks to the omniscient view of the park granted by Alice's barrier, I was able to just barely dodge it. The savagery of the attack blew my hair back. A small, sharp pain ran across my cheek. I could swear that death had touched my soul. I switched the blood flow within me to a different cycle. My blood, circulating at a meter per second, transformed into the imaginary element. My heart became a completely different engine, using my entire body as a circuit. The mage is the engine, and the circle. God damn, what was that Chiro used as like an analogy? Like, a Magus is a car, and the magical circuit's the engine, or some shit. Like, it's just such a weird analogy. I guess Alco is fond of using that too. It was an unknowable motion that couldn't be measured in terms of heat or calories. The mystery, still beyond the grasp of man, that made me what I am today. The fire of life behind every miracle and fable. We Magi call it magical energy. Set. I turned, locked onto the enemy, and raised my arm. It was the executor of my will. Because I was still inexperienced, I could only activate sorcery with words and gestures. So it's kind of like Tosca, even, but she doesn't have jewels. Formulas had been inscribed throughout the park in advance. All I had to do was add the fuel. Just pouring in magical energy generated within my body was enough. Generally speaking, Magi were conduits. It didn't matter if the connection was wired or wireless, as long as it injected magical energy into the formula. Releasing, shooting, pouring, every Magus did it differently, but in my case, it was this feeling of snapping my limbs. That sounds painful. Burn! I countered speed with speed. The enemy was engulfed. They didn't even have time to retract their arm. Considering we were in the park at night, I couldn't help but be reminded of a campfire, though the shadow writhing in the flames was undeniably a human. Doesn't look human to me. The fire vanished just as naturally as it had appeared. The sound and stench of burning faded away. What the hell was that? What the fuck just attacked them? Here, I'll go check the corpse, so you take the barrier. I spoke to Alice, then started walking toward the now motionless figure lying on the ground. I killed them. I killed them. I killed them. Even if they were an enemy, I still stole away a person's life. There's that typical Nasu style of writing where he repeats something ad nauseum, but here it's only like 3 times. If it were Tsukihime, he'd repeat it 20 times. My throat was parched. It didn't feel real. I knew I couldn't swallow away the hard, bitter truth of what I'd done, but I tried anyway. I was surprisingly calm. My heart was pounding and my breath was ragged, but my mind was crystal clear. Before I knew it, the pile of cinders was at my feet. I stared at it warily, half expecting it to spring to life and attack again. Thankfully, everything seemed to be in order. They had completely burned to ash. Something wasn't right. Just glancing at them, the remains felt strangely inorganic. Maybe because they are. They don't look human, that's for sure. My heart sank. Gingerly, I lifted the figure's head, and what greeted me was the white, featureless face of a mannequin. So that's what that was. Shit, they got us again. I kicked the mannequin and screamed. Ash danced in the wind as the corpse disintegrated. But then, it wasn't really a corpse at all, was it? It was just a puppet. Our carefully laid trap had once again come up empty. In other words, my true first battle was still yet to come. Oh, wait a minute. If it's a mannequin, that means it's a doll. It's one of the dolls that, if you guys have... I'm assuming there's probably some people watching this who probably haven't seen Kara no Kyokai. In the Kara no Kyokai movies, Toko made dolls, like dolls that she could give life to. So they were pretty much living dolls. So that's why I feel this was... Obviously, Toko was behind this. But I don't know, because apparently her character is different in this, so I have no idea what she hopes to gain out of it. I guess maybe just because she hates her sister. I don't know. At this rate, I'll never be a real... Huh? Just then, something familiar caught my eye. The shadow of the slide just a little ways away was strange, as if it was being puffed up by something that shouldn't be there. Maybe I was still caught up in the heat of the battle, because it took me a second to realize what that extra shadow was. Who's there?" Calling out was a mistake. As soon as he heard my voice, the person wearing that all too familiar high school uniform nearly jumped out of his skin, turned around, and took off running at an unbelievable pace. It was like he was running for his life. Or rather, that's exactly what he was doing. "Catch him! We've been seen!" I spoke hastily to Alice, but she hadn't even noticed the other presence in the park. That said, I didn't make a move either. As embarrassing as it was to admit, the battle just now had left me unable to run. "No, he's getting away! If we don't get rid of him, then—" There was no room for elegance. For us, being seen here was a matter of life and death. "Wait, you!" I shook off the numbness in my legs and dashed after him. It really was a magnificent escape. The witness melted into the darkness of the residential district without a trace. Damn it! Why didn't the barrier pick him up? I vented my frustration to nobody in particular. He was gone, and there was nothing I could do about it. I gave up the chase, cursing my own ineptitude. Though it was only temporary, right now the park was Alice's forest. Inside, people's faces and voices became hazy and indistinct, like the plot of a fairy tale. He might have seen everything that happened here, but there was no way he could have recognized me or Alice, in which case there was still time to act. We must eliminate him. It was a boy. I walked back to the park. He had definitely been wearing my high school's uniform. As far as clues went, that was more than enough. If he was one of the students, there was no shortage of methods at my disposal to find him. Still, why does this sort of stuff keep happening to me? Grumbling aside, I knew what had to be done. First things first, I needed to track down the witness and silence him before he had the chance to go around spreading weird rumors. Quickly. Ruthlessly. When I raised my head, Alice was there. We were both in the same boat, being found out as Magi. But even so. This is a real mess, huh? She stared out into the darkness indifferently. Her lack of emotion went beyond mere level-headedness. It was like she was made of stone. It seriously pissed me off. Her monotonous voice suited this moonless night so well it made me want to scream. Well then. And that was the end of that episode. Wow, that was pretty short. I guess we're gonna go to the next one then. I actually heard that, when I was looking up, I was looking this up on the internet that, oh wow, we're already on chapter 4. I was looking this up online, and I just came across this, like, I think it was an article. It was saying how apparently Natsu is interested in making a second or a sequel to this game, and I would be all for that, like, because I'm really enjoying this game so far. So if he were ever going to make a sequel to this, I would definitely be behind that, because so far I'm like loving all the characters in this, especially Haoko's character. I like how you get to know more about her, and she seems to have like way more of a personality than she did in Tsukihime, or just a completely different personality, I guess. But I'm really liking it. If they ever did make a sequel, I would definitely look forward to that. But I don't know. I could see that happening. I don't know. It depends on how this game ends. But I think it's probably going to have like an open-ended sort of ending, so there would be room for a potential sequel if there ever was one. But first, this game needs to be completely translated before we even get into that. This might be a little sudden, but I'm a witch. Yeah, we kind of figured as much. As for what that means, well, how should I put it? Basically, imagine those guys from fairy tales who conjure miracles with the point of a finger and hide themselves away in secluded forests. The reality is a bit different, but I think that gets the point across well enough. I also like how they explain things in this, because they don't really go into heavy exposition and expository dialogue like in Tsukihime or Fate Stay Night. Not that I'm completely against that, but here it seems like it's more to the point, and they don't really spend a ton of time going over, like, explaining everything. It pretty much tells you just what you need to know. So I like that about this. Just to be clear, I don't fly around in the sky on a broom. I can't transform into an animal or talk to birds. Well, I'm not sure about that last part. You do have a bird that flies into your window every so often, and is also the icon for this game, so I don't know. Modern magi aren't anything so fanciful. Preposterous, yet practical. Seemingly almighty, yet actually quite constrained. I don't mean to brag when I'm still so inexperienced, but my real job is something romantic like that. Of course, it's a secret. Magi must always conceal their works. That's the first of the association's 10 commandments, and the most important. Though even if it wasn't, it's not like I have any intention of talking openly about something so incomprehensible. It might be a charade, but I still have a reputation as an honor student to uphold. Nothing good would come from people finding out about my other life, just more headaches. That's why I do everything in my power to keep it under wraps. Although, that's only because I haven't accomplished anything yet. Someday, when I've come into my own, it might be nice to reveal my life secret to a single special person. Yeah, getting to casually drop a bomb like, "Actually, I'm a witch," would be the epitome of cool. It's enough to make me want to protect my secret simply for the sake of that moment, regardless of what the association has to say about it. They might send assassins after you to silence you, or something. When I told that to my grandfather, he patted me on the head. I don't know if he was praising me or scolding me, but his touch was gentle. It was decided that I would succeed him the day I graduated from middle school. He pulled me aside as soon as I got home. "Your sister left on a trip. As of today, you are the Aozaki heir." I have no idea how I'm supposed to voice this guy. His words were utterly indifferent, although I didn't really make him sound that way. While I knew that my family passed down some stuffy old thing like sorcery, I honestly never dreamed that the burden of inheriting it would fall to me, whatever, same thing. Traditionally, sorcery is only taught to the eldest child. Jumping through all the hoops required to become a so-called magician was my older sister's role, not mine. The plans I had laid out, the hopes I had for the future, they were all exceedingly normal. It might not have been fair to my sister, but I was going to live my life the way I wanted. Something tells me that in this, her sister has some real deep-seated resentment towards Aoko. I think she does in the other, in Kar no Kyokai too, but it's probably not like it is here. Or so I thought, until she hit me with that ridiculous counterattack. After that, I was plunged headfirst into a world I had only ever glimpsed from the sidelines. It was an unbelievable high school debut. Though I suppose as far as fresh starts go, it wasn't so bad. A lot of things happened between then and now, and there are still a lot of things I'm not used to. It's hard to believe it's almost been 2 years. I'm just glad I haven't had to deal with anything too difficult yet. Yet. You're about to, something tells me. I mean, sure, there was that time that my roommate and I spent 6 months trying to kill each other, but who's counting? Plus, my talent as a magician is apparently pretty amazing, in its own way, so I haven't had any problems on that front either. Something tells me Aoko likes to brag, has a bit of an ego. I've had my share of headaches, of course, but that's just part of being human. I never once felt uneasy about the future. Everything should be smooth sailing from here on out. And you just jinxed yourself. If only it weren't for last night. Well, Alice confronted Aoko as soon as she stepped through the door. Though her voice lacked even the slightest sense of urgency or crisis, her dark, crystalline eyes clearly communicated the gravity of the situation. Aoko stripped out of her drab coat, put it on a hanger, and plopped down on the sofa across from her. "First, how's your side of the investigation going?" "Not good. Lately I've been using these guys non-stop and haven't had to make more, so there are only 7 left." She glanced away, toward the box sitting on the table. "Isn't that a box of chocolates? And none of them were scouting yesterday? I thought their reconnaissance of the town was supposed to be perfect." "That's only during the daytime. It's dangerous flying at night, you know." Aoko sighed. "So they're useless when it counts, huh?" "What about you? You seemed pretty sure of yourself this morning." "Oh, everything's going just fine on my end. I think I'll know who it was by tomorrow. I had tomorrow cross-reference all the students' addresses and schedules. It's rare for anybody to be loitering around the park at that hour, so it should be simple to deduce his identity." "Is it really that easy?" "Of course. My position in the student council isn't just for show. I've been collecting information on everybody at school. Where they work, where their friends live, even how they prioritize their activities. It's a list I had hoped I'd never have to show to anybody, but we don't have that kind of luxury right now. That's why I handed it over to the vice president. He's good at this sort of thing." That's kind of scary. Incidentally, the preparation of that top-secret file began after Aoko became the student council president. The mere rumor of its existence was enough to strike fear into the entire student body. I'll bet. Jesus Christ. How is that not illegal? It's like, I'm going to know everything about you, where you work, where you live, and everything. "I see. You're as thorough as always." Alice was only a little surprised. They had lived together for close to 2 years now. She knew as well as anybody that once Aoko decided to do something, she didn't do it halfway. Well, even I never imagined it would come in handy at a time like this. I guess it's true what they say, better safe than sorry. Still, what happened last night was an exception among exceptions. By all rights, the entire situation should have been impossible. It's kind of like Fate's Day night, when Shiro accidentally saw the servants fighting, then he gets killed. So that's what happens when you see Magi doing Magi things. You die. More importantly, have you figured out what went wrong? Don't tell me you messed up somehow. Aoko glared pointedly. Putting the finishing touches on the barrier had been Alice's responsibility, so if that was the cause of last night's trouble, they needed to determine which one of them was to blame. Uh-oh. They may have been roommates and partners, but that was merely an arrangement of convenience. Though they had been brought together by birth, they were more akin to enemies than allies. In the end, Aozaki Aoko and Koonji Alice were simply incompatible. Striking at every blunder. Attacking at every opening. If the opportunity presented itself, they would both try to kill each other as naturally as breathing. But for some reason they didn't. Alice met Aoko's withering gaze head-on. Those fierce eyes could make a grown man cower, but she didn't even flinch. Suppose you're right, and the barrier was the problem. In that case, this situation would have happened countless times before now, yes? I guess so, Aoko nodded. Just being questioned like this reaffirmed her faith in Alice. So then, the barrier was perfect? I can't say for sure, Alice answered flatly like she always did. Essentially, a barrier is a closed-off world. It refers to the isolation of an area from the outside via some method. There are various types ranging from physical barriers that actually shut away the enclosed space behind a wall, to perceptual barriers that conceal the situation within them using things like mirrors, mist, or trees. However, the cost of closing off the inside is the creation of an abnormality on the inside. Even if a place is forbidden, it is impossible to cover up the fact that it is forbidden. At some point, somebody is bound to come along with an interest in the forbidden place itself, even without being able to see what's going on inside. In other words, it's putting the cart before the horse. A truly superior barrier would be one that cannot be detected from the outside at all, but at the same time allows no outside interference. It was exactly that sort of ideal barrier that Koonji Alice had erected over the park the night before. Even if somebody has business somewhere, they won't go in if you make them think they don't. It takes a lot of time and effort to surround a place you want to hide with a temporary consciousness falsification barrier, but when it comes to keeping people away for an hour or so, it's extremely reliable. On top of that, it was a first-class good made using your mirror, and it's not like it broke halfway through. I'm sure the only thing I felt enter was that puppet. If that's not perfect, then what is? I don't get it either. There weren't any mistakes in the creation of the forest. I cultivated it for several days, so it should have been just as defendable as ever, though I suppose it's possible I missed something. Her eyes said it absolutely was not possible. Damn, in that case, our best bet is that the witness was also the puppeteer. I can almost believe that. At least it makes sense that Magus would be able to break through the barrier. The real problem is how he was able to do it without being detected. The thought of being hunted by somebody like that was horrifying. If he could slip through Alice's barrier using sorcery, that meant he was even more powerful than her. It's kind of hard to believe that Sojiro has any power at all, because we all know that was him. As she was right now, Aozaki Aoko would be absolutely powerless against such an opponent. Sure. I've already ruled out that possibility. He was an outsider. Setting the Starlings aside, even Robin wasn't able to follow him, and there weren't any traces of magical energy. There's no chance he was an innocent victim being manipulated by sorcery. Aoko's fleeting hope crumbled. Fine, she was done asking questions. Nothing to do but chalk it up to bad luck and move on. Getting outed as a Magus, letting the witness escape, not exactly the sort of problem a normal high schooler has to deal with, huh? She slumped back into the sofa and looked skyward. Sadly, her gaze was met by brown ceiling. This sucks, she thought, sinking deeper and deeper into depression. Aoko, pull yourself together. Her roommate's indifferent voice buzzed in her ears, but she ignored it and kept staring vacantly at the wood above. Or, if you're not up to it, I can always handle it myself. Cold words from a cold girl. Aoko took them in slowly, with as much sincerity as she could muster. It was like swallowing molten lead. That's right, I already made my decision. Of course, that was a lie. This time and last time were clearly different. What she had to do might be the same, but the situation of her target wasn't. Before, her resolution had been that of a Magus. She would take on all challenges and defeat any enemy that dared show themselves before her. When both parties were magi, the fault fell on the instigator. Even if the conclusion amounted to little more than murder, there was at least mutual consent. It was a simple matter of kill or be killed. Morality didn't factor into it at all. However, that wasn't the case now. The opponent this time was not an enemy, nor was he a magus. While she may be prepared to kill, he almost certainly was not prepared to die. That's why it was wrong. Could she really bear that burden of slaughtering the innocent? Could she accept that for a magus such things came naturally and often? As if, she laughed sardonically. It wasn't like she was some ubermensch that could sever her ties to society just because she was a magus. She hated doing things without conviction or understanding. When she acted, it was only after reaching a decision for herself. When you put it like that, I guess my hands are tied. She sat up from the sofa, refreshed. It seemed she had quite enough of the ceiling and was back to her usual self. In that case, take this. As if to reward her, Alice produced a small bottle roughly the size of her palm. It was a shabby-looking thing, totally out of place in her slender fingers. The glass was clouded, the contents were empty, and there were bits of gunk left over where the label had been forcibly removed. What is it? Alco squinted at the bottle suspiciously. There was something off about it. A storage vial. I only have one left, so I'm giving it to you. And? The name eludes me, but it's just like something in a Chinese novel. Somehow, Alco was able to extract what she meant from that less than helpful explanation. You're saying this is the red gourd from that story about the two brothers guarding the Lotus Cave? This thing that, I hate to say it, looks like a medicine bottle with the label ripped off. Alice gazed at the bottle intensely. Certainly, it wasn't very sophisticated. But it wasn't like she was the one that was going to use it. She set it on the table. It's more like the Suet Jade flask than the red gourd. That's not the issue here. What about my dignity as a magus? You shouldn't concern yourself over trivialities. Just be thankful it wasn't a bottle of laxatives. What the fuck? It was a fairly compelling argument. Yeah, I guess there would be. Look at Alco's reflection on the table. All you have to do is open the lid and ask him his name. But be careful. The bottle will break if he resists. Was there a genie in there or something? Alco raised her eyebrows at that. Wait a minute. If he can't resist, that means I have to use it while he's sleeping, right? I've never tried that. Are there people who will answer questions in their sleep? Oh, they're using it on the person who saw them. So are they going to poison him or something? Yes, actually, though I'll admit it's pretty rare. In which case, you would need to weaken him as much as possible until he was close to passing out. Oh, right. If you drug him or use sorcery, the bottle will overload and break, so be mindful of that too. Useless! It's freaking useless! That really depends on you, doesn't it? Alice averted her eyes as if to say she was tired of talking about it. Huh, you always did have a thing for these sort of trinkets. Is this another one of your hobbies? Alco asked while silently wishing her roommate would dial it back a little. I suppose it is. At any rate, how about it? Are you going to take it or not? Silence. Then, after a brief moment of hesitation, she snatched the bottle off the table and put it in her pocket. Well, she thought, never know when it might come in handy. Yep. Never know when you might need to poison somebody. Or let out a genie in a bottle, whatever that's supposed to be. A few hours later, at 9 o'clock, the conversation had moved from the parlor to the sunroom, where a scene was unfolding that seemed totally out of place in this Western-style mansion. Seriously though, I didn't leave everything to Tobimaro because I wanted to. A steaming earthenware pot sat on the table. Alco was grumbling to nobody in particular as she plunked out food with her chopsticks. Tonight they were having Japanese cuisine, unbecoming of a European estate. This sort of hot pot cooking that didn't require any effort behind buying the ingredients to prepare was mainly handled by Alco. Across from her, Alice prodded silently at the stew with her fork. It's all because Yamashiro showed up spouting some nonsense like, Sojiro hasn't joined any clubs, take care of that for me, will you? In the end, I didn't have the energy to go over the activity of every single student too. The egg she had taken was still snow white, so she put it back and reached for some of the fast-cooking shiratori noodles instead. Don't you dare do that. Anyway, I know that idiot is busy all the time with work. That's why I tried my hardest to find him a club with a captain that would treat him well and let him take it easy until spring. And what do I get? Not even a thank you. Hey, are you listening, Alice? No, I'm trying to steal your food, bitch. Perhaps her mouth was full of food because she merely nodded silently in response. Her expression said she wasn't interested at all and had absolutely no opinion on the matter, but at the very least it seemed she was paying attention. Satisfied, Aoko nibbled on some handpin. But what really gets me is how everybody keeps talking about how great he is. I mean, even Topomaro was going on about it. Of all people, he's not that great, he's just a blockhead. Really, there must be something wrong with him if he didn't get angry after what I said. Everybody gets angry at me. Even though, like, what was his, yeah, Sojiro, I keep forgetting his name. He's, like, probably the nicest person. Because, and it's kind of weird because he's pretty much nice because he's so naive and stupid. She thought about what had happened in the student council room earlier. And about how Sojiro had taken her one-sided abuse and left without so much as a whimper of protest. Just remembering his stupid, smug face was enough to make her swallow the rest of her handpan without chewing it. What is it I understand? His parting words had been eerily similar to the ones that marked the end of her childhood. You understand, don't you, Aoko? That you can continue on as yourself regardless. That takes incredible strength. It had probably been meant as praise. However, to her it seemed like a cruel evaluation, because the person who said it had done so with eyes full of pity. Well, whatever. It doesn't matter what that freak had to say anymore. Still, while it may have been the biggest delusion of her life, seeing the person she had respected more than anybody make a face like that had shocked her young heart. Fight. Huh? The sudden interjection snapped her out of her reverie. Sorry, I missed that. You said something about a fight? Alice nodded. I can't be sure just from what you've told me, but it sounds like you were trying to pick a fight with him. Aoko is like in competition now with Tosca with some of the best expressions. She bit into the last handpin. Her comment was entirely unexpected and frighteningly to the point. Where'd that come from? I don't want anything to do with him. No way. Not interested. I don't even like talking about him. But you talk about him all the fucking time. Then why did you bring him up? Well, you see, that's... I was just reporting on today's investigation, that's all. Honestly, what other reason could there be? It wasn't until several hours later, after she had said goodnight and gone to bed, that Aoko realized that she had dug her own grave, climbed in, and buried herself with her own two hands. It's fine, I don't really care. But, Aoko, are you sure you hate him? Alice ate her oden in silence, as if it was some sort of sacred rite. While outwardly she was as indifferent as always, on the inside a part of her was amused by how Aoko was acting. However, Aoko didn't even notice. Normally, she would have seen through her roommate's game in a second, but right now her mind was clouded. Am I sure? Of course I'm sure. I keep telling you I can't stand him, don't I? Yes, but why? Huh? If you're asking for specifics, that's... She finally noticed the contradiction. Huh? That's right, there wasn't a single reason for the way she felt. Her instincts had simply told her that she and the country boy were totally incompatible the second she laid eyes on him. But why on earth was that? She hated irrational emotions and baseless assumptions more than anything. Somebody make a gif of this, please. Well, obviously, if I hate him, there must be something, so... The more she talked, the more flustered she became. Unfortunately, no matter how hard she looked, she couldn't find a reason to hate Sojiro. His lack of common sense wasn't his fault, it was a product of the environment he grew up in. If anything, he should be admired for trying so hard to adapt to civilized society. And though he was absent-minded, it didn't mean he was slow. If he seemed to be a step behind everybody else, it was only because his gentle nature compelled him to carefully consider everything he said and he did before acting. Breaking it down objectively like this, the conclusion was clear. She didn't want to admit it, but he really was the good guy that everybody said he was. Seriously? He seriously doesn't have any faults? There are plenty of things wrong with that, so she decided to shelve it for the time being. Her chopsticks, which until now had been restlessly poking at the rolling oden, froze. She was getting irritated. Like always, her head swam with irrational hatred. Unable to accept it, she tried desperately to analyze Sojiro, but only succeeded in cornering herself further. Alice stared at her. I'm surprised. A small sigh. This isn't like you, Aoko. That was the final blow. Aoko felt the world fall out from under her. Even after Alice thanked her for the meal and left, it was quite a while before she was able to stand up from her chair. Uh-oh. What's going on now? However, Alco wasn't one to lie around and mope forever just because she had gotten knocked down. She quickly tidied up after dinner, surrendered the first bath to Alice, and left the parlor. In Western houses, it was customary to keep the lights off when there was no people, so the only places with any illumination were the parlor and the girls' bedrooms. The second floor was shrouded in darkness. She walked briskly through this long moonlit hallway before finally arriving at the deepest part of the east wing. I've decided. Sneak attacks just don't sit right with me, had she been thinking the entire time. As soon as she entered her room, she made a definitive declaration. If I do this, I'm not going to hide. I'm going to face him head on and tell him exactly why he has to die. It was not a concession made out of pity. It was simply the standard by which she lived her life. Okay, now that that's settled. After confirming her intention, she made her way to the study next door. It's time to do some black magic. Let's see. Thursday shelf, winter solstice, green spine. Without hesitation, she pulled out a single volume from amongst the countless books. The introductory texts she had brought with her from the Awazaki house were arranged into 6 categories across 6 shelves, each corresponding to a day of the week from Monday to Saturday. She had organized her collection based on content, classification, and use, and had more or less memorized what was what. All of its knowledge was at her fingertips, ready to be drawn out in a moment's notice. It was the very least she could do as the owner of this room. Still, no matter how much she puffed it up, at the end of the day, it was just a tiny study. The library in the annex was another beast altogether, and an untamable one at that. If she couldn't find what she needed here, she would have no choice but to call Alice and head over there. Hopefully, it won't come to that, though. She placed the green, thickly bound book on her desk and sat down. It was a hard, sturdy desk, utterly devoid of human warmth, not the sort of thing a teenage girl would normally treasure. But Alco rather liked its overly polished bare-bones luxury. Carefully, she flipped through the pages of the weathered tome before her. There's no way I can make a barrier like Alice's. I'll have to rely on the place itself to keep people away. Deep mountains, thick forests, a schoolhouse at night. Places where, barring extreme bad luck, nobody would come around even without using sorcery or best. A wall of thorns, a magical fog, those sort of circuitous methods are fine, but for cutting off a path of retreat something flashier would be better. She turned another page, wondering if she'd even be able to find an elementary formula that suited her tastes. It should go without saying that she was looking for a way to deal with the witness from last night. Sorcery was versatile, but there were limits. At its core, it was merely the manifestation of things that already existed or occurred in reality, albeit with a slight disregard for time and materials required. Phenomena not of this universe were impossible to reproduce. In short, it was equivalent exchange that cut every possible corner. Taking what people had achieved and realizing it through the power of an individual. That was generally how it worked. Simply put, she could even summon an enormous lake to this mansion if she put her mind to it. However, bringing about something that did not exist in this world, no matter how small, was impermissible. For example, even if she was able to emit heat equivalent to the afterburner of an F-15 fighter jet, all that really meant was the circuit called Awazaki Alco had temporarily become an input variable through the use of a magical formula. The derived equivalency itself then became a result that could occur in reality. If it didn't, the formula would not complete. The imaginary element known as magical energy was like a fiction that could slip past the order of things, but only at the moment of ignition. Giving form to that which did not exist, desecrating reality with fantasy, was something the universe did not tolerate. Then the counter-force would activate. That said, how did it go again? Ether can basically do anything, but it's fake at its core? Things created solely from magical energy will be treated as illusions and quickly disappear, so for a typical barrier like the Wall of Thorns, you should cultivate the thorns beforehand and then use magical energy to grow and strengthen them in a flash. Ultimately, magical energy is both a convenient fuel as well as the spark that triggers a phenomenon. Not that it matters. Imaginary elements are all well and good, but I can't do anything except connect a basic circuit, process magical energy, and shoot it out. She laughed and continued her search. Although the witness's identity was unknown, if he was a student at her school, there were any number of pretexts she could use to draw him out. The problem was what to do after. It all came down to accuracy, huh? If it can't end in a single strike, there's a good chance he'll escape. Truthfully, she wasn't sure she could pull it off without Alice's support. Even so, she had flatly refused any help, saying that as long as her opponent was just a normal person, she should be able to handle it on her own. She may have lacked talent, but she still had her pride as a magus. Page after page flipped by in a steady rhythm. Then, just like that, the gentle rustling stopped. Found it. Her lips curled ever so slightly into a smile. It was a straightforward and purely destructive formula that had been buried deep in the recesses of her mind. I just need to make a cage. After all, that's what you do on a hunt, right? Make sure your prey can't escape? Marking that page with a bookmark, she stood up to take it back to her room. Just then, she felt someone's gaze on her. A cold-eyed girl was reflected in the window. Aoko calmly drank in the fact that this was her face now. She had begun forming a plan to eliminate the witness. No, calling it a plan was generous. This was merely work. She would build a cage, then lure her prey into it. There was no sugarcoating it. It was violence, plain and simple. Well then, Alice should be done soon. She suddenly made a trivial announcement, as if trying to warm her own heart. It had been almost 20 minutes since she let Alice have the first bath. Of course, her roommate always bathed quickly, so even 10 minutes probably would have been enough. Alice was the type of person who took no pleasure from bathing and merely saw it as a chore necessary for maintaining her body. Even the wonder of a hot spring resort was lost on her, though on that point, at least, she and Aoko were in total agreement. Good, the bathroom is empty, so, the light's on in the parlor. It was strange for Alice to linger downstairs after a bath. Unless she had something to discuss, she usually went straight back to her room. Alice, you here? Alice nodded. She wasn't reading. Apparently she had been waiting for her. So that's how it is, huh? Aoko scratched her head. Was it a lack of faith? Worry? Alice's expressions were too subtle, so it was hard to get a read on what she was thinking. I've got a plan now. Want to hear it? I can tell what it is. I can tell what it is just by looking at your face. Still, I'm glad you've stopped wavering. That's a bad habit, Aoko. A small sigh. Alice rarely made a show of being disappointed. Yeah, but you should know, I'm not going to resort to trickery. If I kill him, it's going to be fair and square, and only after I plainly explain the reason why. That way, there won't be any hard feelings. Is that going to be a problem? There won't be any hard feelings even though you're going to kill him. I have no complaints. You're free to do as you wish. But you're worried about my aim, right? Don't worry, I was planning to compensate for that with the location. Since I can't do it like you, I was thinking of making it physically inescapable, but any ideas? Alice thought about it for a moment. The finger touched lightly to her lips indicated that the question was to her liking. How about mirrors? With a realm of mirrors, you'd be able to imprison him forever. You've got absolutely no common sense when it comes to stuff like this, do you? Or taste, for that matter, Aoko frowned. It was exactly the sort of idea she should have expected from her roommate, and one that was totally useless to her. What she needed was a barrier that she could prepare herself, not some grand barrier on the verge of being magic. There was no way she could make something like that. If you don't like it, think of something else, but whatever you do, don't bring him here. Yeah, you don't have to tell me that. But you know, a hall of mirrors just might work. She pushed herself up off the wall she had been leaning against, a wicked smile on her face. Thank you, Alice. I think I know what to do now. I guess it's true. It never hurts to ask for help. Aoko left in high spirits. It wasn't clear what she was planning, but she seemed to think it was foolproof. Cheerful humming drifted from the direction of the bathroom. Over the past year and a half, the girl in black had learned one thing. Whenever Aozaki Aoko was this happy, some unbelievable misfortune was sure to follow. You're asking if it's really alright to leave everything to her? Oh, well, she can talk to birds. How long it had been in the parlor? A robin-like bird chirped merrily as it strutted over the furniture. True, well, she did say she'd do it alone, so letting her handle it is the right thing to do from a standpoint of mutual trust. Then again, she raised her arm. Twittering, the songbird perched itself on her lovingly outstretched finger. As much as it pains me to say it, trust and faith are two entirely different things. Her voiceless companion puffed out its stout breast in agreement. But of course, Aoko had no way of knowing about these unsettling whispers. And we go back to Sojiro? Maybe? The next day, the sky was as cloudy as ever. The day's classes had passed by uneventfully. Final exams were fast approaching, and winter break was close on their heels. Although it was currently under the yoke of strict regulations, Misaki High was by nature an easygoing place that valued the independence of its students above all else. The serious students could be as serious as they wished under the protection of the student council president, while the carefree students frittered away after their school period as they pleased, within the confines of personal responsibility, of course. Let's get drunk! That the most freewheeling student of all was himself the vice president of the student council was a testament to this school's peculiar brand of broad-mindedness. Yo, Alko! Tsukiji Tobimaro gleefully burst through the door to the student council room, rumored to be used for all sorts of clandestine meetings and secret negotiations. Despite all appearances to the contrary, he was still the vice president, and the unfortunate soul tasked with carrying out the student council's dirty work. A single person was waiting within the cramped, narrow room. The student council president, Aozaki Aoko, sat straight up in her folding chair and glared at him for raising a ruckus. Ugh, freezing as usual, why don't we buy a heater next time? He started chatting casually, refusing to buckle under her silent intimidation. Take a seat, you remember why we're here, right? Doesn't it get old being all business all the time? You've gotta shoot the shit a little, liven things up. He shut the door and sat down. In his hand was a blue envelope. At times like this, it's better to avoid useless conversation. That's how the pros do it. It's sure... wait, no! He started to agree with her sharp response, but stopped himself and violently shook his head. No matter how much he loved freedom, he had no interest in pretending to be a spy. So, did you finish the investigation? Yeah, I actually just wrapped up the last interview. The details are all in here, along with the file you gave me. So she was interrogating all the students individually. That's pretty creepy. He tossed the envelope onto the table. Good. Aoko picked it up and started to skim over the documents inside. As she did, the world around her seemed to fade away. It was no exaggeration to say she had mastered the art of ignoring people. Hey! What? I've got a question. Then ask it already. An icy silence settled over the room. Aoko flipped through the papers emotionlessly. Across the table, Tobimaro stared at her indifferently. Do you enjoy making that sort of stuff? Of course not. What's fun about making something you never get to use? Oh, good. Had he been convinced, he stood up, a gloomy look on his face. You'll see if you reach the end, but I wasn't able to get any solid proof. Or rather, it looks like there wasn't any students in that area the day before yesterday, though obviously I can't say for sure. He approached the door as if to say he was washing his hands of this. Oh, wait, now that I think about it, there is one person that wasn't in your file. I guess even you wouldn't have had time to finish looking into a mid-year transfer student, huh? Aoko's ears perked up. Certainly, the boy who just transferred here was outside the scope of her research. That's why I didn't investigate Soji. Well, knowing him, he was probably out late working. Or at least, that's what I'd think if he hadn't come to me with that ridiculous story about seeing a murder. Maybe he was at home having a nightmare? Tobimaro left as gleefully as he had come. Huh? At the same time, the papers Aoko had been holding fell to the table. She didn't mean to do it, but for some reason, all the strength had been drained from her fingertips. No way. She tried telling herself she was just overthinking it. However, her sudden unease remained. She knew that in situations like this, her instincts were usually correct. It's totally ridiculous. Even so, that didn't change what had to be done. Supposing that the witness was Tobimaro, she was sure she could kill him without hesitation. But if it was him? Just considering the possibility made her feel colder than any hypothetical. She buried her forehead in her hands and sank deep into thought. And then, abruptly, let us speak of choice, for you will always be faced with choices. A virtuous fool and a wicked sage, there is no way to save them both. You must pick one or the other. That is the only freedom afforded to you. 2 years ago, Aoko murmured the words her grandfather had spoken on the day she had become his heir instead of her sister, and sighed. What a joke. The accuracy of her intuition made her laugh. Really, why did she have to go and say it out loud? She stepped out into the hallway, locking the door to the student council room behind her. The fact that she was able to calmly greet the students passing by as if nothing had happened was as surprising as it was expected. The school was still bustling with activity. Even discounting those who were there for clubs, the campus was alive with the voices of students who had finished their business for the day and were getting ready to go home. The gray sky threatened to burst at any moment, but nobody seemed to mind. Mingling with the crowd, Aoko made a beeline for the school gate. The students she passed along the way were engaged in spirited conversation, mostly about their plans for after school. It seemed they didn't want even a second of their precious afternoon to go to waste. While she couldn't understand their insatiable desire for fun, she didn't look down on them, nor did she envy them. Until just 2 years ago, she had enjoyed that sort of freedom herself. Am I getting callous? She tried pulling her scarf tighter to give off an air of solitude, but she wasn't very good at it. In the first place, when somebody who wasn't alone pretended that they were, that wasn't solitude at all, merely rejection. Yeah, that's what they say at least. There was a bigger commotion than usual at the gate, evidently due to the throng of boys loitering behind it. They were huddled together, arguing fervently among themselves about a girl standing in the street. Oh no. What is she doing here? She was wearing a black cape. At first glance, it appeared to be a normal attire, but any resident of Misaki would know that underneath it was the uniform of a certain prestigious girls' academy. However, that girls' academy had no relation whatsoever to with Misaki High School. It was an existence far removed from them both physically and mentally. The majority of girls who went there were forced to live in the dorms, and it was rare to see them around town. Its name was Rain Academy for Girls. Oh, Rain! Rain from, that's from, Kara no Kyokai. I guess, I didn't know it took place in Misaki, I don't know, I never really looked up the location of Rain, so... Yeah, I guess it's a Rain Girls Academy. Might run into what was it, Azaka? I think that was the sister's names from Kara no Kyokai. I forget what her name is. Yeah, it was Azaka. And though it was known far and wide as a school for the daughters of the elite, most had never so much as laid eyes on that uniform in real life. That alone would have been enough to send the boys into a frenzy, but to top it off, the girl herself was stunning. Her stance could only be described as cute. The way she waited without stirring an inch gave the impression of a meticulously crafted painting. If Aoko had to sum her up in a word, it would be lonely. Oh, for the love of... That's why the boys are all skulking around here instead of going home. Aoko barged through the gate in disgust. Except where she would normally continue down the hill, she crossed the street and headed straight for the girl standing on the roadside. Huh? What's the student council president doing here? Damn it, don't tell me she's gonna chase her away. If she wants to stand there, let her stand there. More importantly, is that angel really going to get chewed out? I don't really think just standing near the gate is that big of a deal though, even if she is a student from another school. Yeah, but Lady Aoko is merciless. If she's not careful, she's gonna get slapped. Slapped, I tell you! Jeez. Behind her back, the boys were spouting out every little thing that popped into their heads. She didn't feel like turning around to shut them up, so she just kept walking, greeting the girl in front of her with an unenthusiastic wave. What is it, Alice? I already told you there's nothing for you to see here. What? A chorus of shrieks rang out in harmony from behind the gate, but of course she ignored them. I came to check on you know what. But first, Aoko. Do something about these people. Right, I'll get rid of them. Where Alice spoke softly, Aoko's voice boomed loud and clear. It was, after all, a show for the benefit of the horde swarming behind the gate. Huh? She's coming this way! Hey, stop pushing, you guys in the back, move it, I'm getting out of here! No, wait, doesn't it seem like that girl's a friend of the president's? Maybe we could get an introduction. Spoken like a true first-year newbie. You still don't know the horrors of the battlefield. Go ahead and dream if you want to, but it'll be the last one you ever have. With so many people crammed into one place, they tripped all over themselves trying to escape. Well then, if I'm not mistaken, none of you have any club activities. Would you mind filling me in on why exactly you've decided to gather here today instead of going home? Hey! Her face was full of contempt. Exams are right around the corner. If you're doing something useful, I'd love to hear it. Surely you aren't just standing around leering at that poor girl over there because you're too gutless to talk to her, right? Not one of them was brave enough to step forward and admit that yes, that was exactly right. Of course, if any of them had been, they wouldn't have been hiding behind the gate in the first place. Actually, I think I forgot something back in my classroom. If it was just going to end this way anyway, I should have fought to the death. Maybe we could borrow some binoculars from the astronomy club and head up to the roof? Why the hell would the astronomy club have binoculars? Isn't that more up the bird-watching club's alley? Didn't you hear the president shut them down last month? She said if they have time for admiring birds, they should use it to find girlfriends instead. Right, get a girlfriend. Sorry, I'll be going out the rear entrance today, Zaki. Shit, later, Prez. See ya. The boys scattered like beaten dogs, leaving behind nothing but charming quips. You seem to be enjoying yourself, Alko. Oh, you can tell? Alko responded to Alice's observation almost instantaneously. In fact, the students of Misaki High were all more or less agreeable people, and exchanges with them were always amusing. So, if you've come all this way, I take it that means you've found something. Yes, I was able to identify traces of the witness remaining in the barrier. I came here to confirm them. I see. Hey, how long have you been out here anyway? Since I got out of school. In other words, for almost an hour. For someone averse to the cold, standing in the same spot for so long must have been torture. Sorry for putting you through that. It's fine. I'm here because I want to be. As she spoke, her black eyes were scanning over the students passing through the gate. She had probably been observing them like this for the entire time she had been here. You weren't even waiting for me, were you? Alice shook her head. The only reason she was still around was because she hadn't yet found the student that matched the traces she had recovered. If she had, she would have already gone home and been investigating his identity. Anyway, it was a total bust on my end. Alko relayed the final results of Tobimaru's investigation, but Alice said nothing. The conversation ended there, leaving little to do but endure the freezing wind. The silent observation stretched on, seemingly without end. Student after student passed through the gate, each greeted by the surprising sight of the student council president hanging out with a girl from Rain Academy as they left. After 20 minutes of this, Alko sighed, pushed along by cold and boredom. Hey, Alice, why don't we stop by Reimei on the way home? She stole a quick glance at Alice's face. Reimei was the name of Alko's favorite tea house. It was hard to say if she was criticizing Alko for failing to understand the situation or agreeing with her suggestion, but Alice's eyes shifted slightly. And, at the end of her gaze was, Oh, are you meeting somebody too, Alko? An unexpected voice pierced through the gaps in Alko's awareness. There was only one person with such an easy, considerate way of speaking. Turning her back to Alice, she looked sternly in the direction of the student who had just arrived. Oh no! Here comes trouble. So, what do you want today? She didn't even bother with a greeting. Her sullen gaze grew more hostile as she stared at Sojiro, but apparently he didn't notice. Oh, nothing. I'm actually on my way to meet the captain of the swim team by the station, and I thought I'd say thanks. By all rights, it was a baffling combination. Club activities and thanks? But for some reason she had been expecting him to show up saying something stupid like that. When you say thanks, you're actually talking about payback, right? Through some strange stroke of luck, it seemed that Sojiro was still blissfully unaware that the word payback had another darker meaning. I don't really get it, but it's nothing that important. It's just about how the swim team isn't very busy until summer. He was about to go on about how Alko had recommended it, but she cut him off with a bored look on her face. Don't mention it. I couldn't very well send someone a club member that never comes to meetings, so since there was a place that could accommodate even your busy schedule, I told you about it, that's all. Oh, I see. That way everybody wins. His admiration was so genuine, she lost the will to complain. Though in her book, having to go through the trouble of finding a club that would suit him and working out the details with its captain had been a very big loss indeed. Well, whatever the reason, you really helped me out. That's why I wanted to thank you. He started to bow, but Alko hastily interrupted him. Enough already. If you keep going on, you're just going to make me mad. Anyway, how do you like the swim team? Are you getting along with everybody? Her gaze, usually so sharp, had become somehow awkward. The way she was acting was making Sojiro uncomfortable, but since he couldn't pinpoint the source of his misgivings, he simply started with what he knew and shared the latest news. Oh, the swim team kicked me out. What? Reeling from that unexpected bombshell, Alko unintentionally raised her voice. Or rather, she looked like a human Jack-in-the-Box. It was such an absurd development, she actually forgot all about everything that had been troubling her these past few days, if only for an instant. But aren't you going to meet the captain right now? Yeah, we're going to the heated pool in Yashirogi. He answered her flustered protests with a nod. You're not making any sense. If things are going that well, why didn't they let you join? Oh, that. It's probably because I can't swim. Oh, shit. So that's your game, huh? She massaged the bridge of her nose. Sojiro, do you remember what I asked you yesterday about whether you prefer running or swimming? I'm sure my memory is correct, but I'll ask just in case. You definitely answered swimming, right? That's because I've always wanted to learn how to swim, and I'm already pretty good at running. I see. She no longer had the strength to argue. From what I understand, there wouldn't be a problem if I was a first year. They train me from the ground up. The problem is, I'll be a third year in 3 months, and they can't afford to take on a member that will only be dead weight. Luckily, the captain was nice enough to offer to give me swimming lessons anyway. He seemed happy, but that was hardly enough to move Alco. So basically that means I pressured them into buying a defective product. I'm never going to live this down. Wait. Sojiro, the captain of the swim team is... She almost said a girl, but stopped herself mid-sentence. The moment she opened her mouth, she had a dreadful premonition that she was about to blurt out something weird. Fine, I understand how you feel. So could you do me a favor and get lost? I'm kind of tired, and dealing with you is the last thing I need right now. Tobimaro was saying the same thing, that you've been unusually tired since yesterday. Did something happen? Just a little something, but it's fine. I think I've got a handle on it now. More importantly, how do I look to you? Do I really seem so exhausted? Why had she asked such a thing? It was rare for words to slip out of her mouth on impulse, and for no reason. Maybe she had simply decided to have at least one normal conversation with the boy, at the very end. Sojiro furrowed his brow for a moment, before a beaming smile appeared over his normally vacant face. I don't think you look tired at all. In fact, I'd say you look energetic, like a wolf that's been forced to plow a field for ages, excited to finally be back on the hunt. That's actually kind of accurate. It seemed like he was truly happy for her. Alco brought her hand up to her cheek, almost without thinking. If what he was saying was true, that meant that right now she was grinning like an idiot. Naturally, there was no way she had made a mistake like that. Anyway, thanks again. I'll see you tomorrow. He said goodbye and turned to leave. Apparently, he still wasn't comfortable with waving because while his voice and face were clear and earnest, his arms never left his side. Wait, one more thing before you go, she called out to stop him. Her voice was icy, as if she was scolding herself for actually being halfway pleasant earlier. Yes? I'm going to ask you a purely hypothetical question. Suppose you're starving, on the verge of death. In front of you are two animals just as hungry as you are. You're given a gun and told you can only kill one of them. On the right is a lion, on the left a kitten. Which do you choose? It's entirely up to you. What the fuck? Who asks something like that? It was something out of a fairy tale, cruel and preachy. There was no easy answer, and yet he answered easily. I don't think I'll kill either. After all, you said I can do as I like, right? And we're all brothers in hunger. He didn't even have to think about it. It was a truly and unbelievably innocent response. You're going to live for a long time, you know that? Really? You're probably the first person that's ever said so. It was an awful thing to say with a smile. What's that supposed to mean? She regretted stopping him. If only she had just quietly let him go, she never would have had to hear all this. And Sojiro plodded away down the hill. He would doubtless be working late into the night again today. Only Alco and Alice remained, the latter of whom had been doing her best to blend in with the scenery. Surprised he didn't even notice Alice. I swear, for a harmless country boy, he sure knows how to throw off my game. She clenched her right hand into a fist as she spoke. The location wasn't terribly important, but if she didn't do something with her body, there was a very real chance that she would scream for reasons she didn't entirely understand. Was it him she reviled or herself? Without putting it into words, she would never know. I want to say that she's somehow, I don't know if I'd say in love with him, but somehow, for whatever reason, infatuated with him. I don't know if that's the right word. But I guess that's what's going on, because there's no romance in this, so I don't know. Probably the former. Or no, not the former, I mean the latter. Because no romance, so she she can't really be in love. Alco. A soft voice behind her. She already knew what it was going to say. She had known for a while now. Ever since Alice, who had watched so many students go by without so much as moving a muscle, changed her expression when Sojiro appeared. You don't have to say it. It's him. He's the witness. She spoke as if she was talking about a stranger. The lion and the kitten. They each had their own pros and cons, but at the end of the day, she had been asking him to choose between two living beings different from himself. Oh, okay, that was what she was doing. I thought that was just... I seriously thought that was something she just did out of nowhere. In terms of risk, the lion was obviously more dangerous. There was always the possibility that it would launch a final desperate counterattack the instant the gun was pointed at it. Is the lion's saber. Therefore, while those who would choose to aim at the lion were courageous, at the same time the feeling of guilt from having a gun disappeared. After all, the opponent was a formidable beast. Even if that was nothing more than a convenient excuse on the part of humans, the sense of wrongdoing from using a gun in such a situation was thin at best. Then, what of the kitten? Unlike the lion, it was weak. But while it would certainly be easier to aim a gun at, was there anybody who would feel right about it? Even if it was an uneven match from the start, that was just too outrageous. And for Aoko, that same outrageousness applied to Sojiro. I had a feeling it was him too. When she had her premonition in the student council room, she had made up her mind to simply accept it if it turned out to be true. But with his parting words, that resolution faltered. The discomfort in her chest was not guilt. She couldn't stand Sojiro, he was weak and docile. So then, what was the problem? He was a transfer student who had come from the country to live alone in the city. Unlike other people, almost nobody would notice if he disappeared. Killing him would be as simple as wringing a cat's neck. Really, it was so perfect that it was infuriating. How lucky could she get? She wanted to kick his ass for making it so easy. I can't believe it. I hate it. It isn't right. This isn't like me. Perhaps Alice could hear her muttering, standing so close behind her. If she did, she chose to ignore it, and... He had a cloth wrapped around his neck. Commented on something entirely unrelated. The strangeness of it snapped Aoko back to reality. His neck? Yes, I wonder if he started wearing it when the swim team cut him. Alice pondered it seriously. Actually, now that I think about it, he's had it since I met him. It just doesn't stand out since he's always kept his collar buttoned. Oh, they're talking about that bandage. Yeah, I was wondering why the hell that was there too. That was weird. It was a frivolous, meaningless conversation. Nothing would come of it, and yet it was exactly what Aoko needed. Thank you, Alice. I think I'm good now. And I'm ready. We'll strike while the iron's hot and settle things before he can start any unfortunate rumors. She turned her back on the school gate, reinvigorated. First things first, she needed to go back to the mansion and prepare for battle. She's not even going to be fighting him, though. He's not going to put up a fight. Does she really need to prepare for this? It's not like he's a Magus. Alright, when and where will you kill him? Even whispered, it wasn't the sort of thing that should be said in public. Oh, wait. That track's playing again. It was the track that played when, at the beginning of the game where she saw the dead kittens. I can't help but wonder if that's somehow a reference to that, like them playing this track because the kittens died when this track played and, you know, she was talking about killing a kitten. It could just be coincidence. Normally, it was Aoko's job to keep that dangerous part of Alice in check, but it seemed that at the moment she was feeling fairly dangerous herself. Tonight, in a marvelous land of dreams, instead of censure, a defiant laugh escaped her lips. It was strangely sweet, like the laugh of a girl meeting with her lover. That's pretty fucked up.